have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass is my partner, Mark Wages, as always. And do you know what? We got a good one tonight. This is we're off the beaten path, people. This is a little different, and you ask, and we hear you. You know, my bobbleheaded partner put out a call for people to to weigh in on anything they might like to hear about, and I got 2 emails last night, and there was a comment left. And previous to that, I had had one other individual that had reached out to me on 2 or 3 occasions to ask me about psychedelics and hallucinogenics. Before I get going, though, the this one is of a very personal nature to me, and I'm sure everybody on the boat, but very much to me and to my family. We need some prayers for Charlie Mullins. You know, if you're new to the boat, sometimes you hear me call him Charlie Murphy, but Charlie Mullins is he's family. He really is to me, to my brother. He's just really a great guy, and you know, you see him here all the time. He's as constant as the Northern Star here on the lifeboat, and he's going in for a procedure tomorrow. And you know, we have faith that everything is going to go great, but prayers would be really good. This is I want all hands on deck, so to speak. This is this is family, everybody. So please, if you could keep Charlie in your thoughts, your prayers, your energy, whatever it is that you do, that would mean an awful lot to all parties involved. So psychedelics, you know, they fall into the category of hallucinogenics, but hallucinogenics also include, you know, marijuana, some other things, and there's not much research being done, in terms of treatment for things like post-traumatic stress disorder, people with terminal illness, depression, an awful lot of different things. And very, very important to us is substance abuse. Is substance abuse. And a lot of studies are being done right now with psychedelics in treating drug addiction, which may sound like, like almost a misnomer, right? You're going to treat drug addiction with a different drug, but there's really a lot of research here that is showing a tremendous amount of hope, and there's a lot of science to back this up, which I really, hey, congratulations, DT68, day 3, no opiates. And he says promise. You know what? We trust everybody here, my friend. And it's amazing how people come back and tell the truth. Hey, I stumbled or whatever, so we believe you.
High five, DT. High five.
Yeah, big time high five.
One in the chat for DT. How about that, guys? Give me one.
Yeah, you know what? Good stuff. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I think that that probably makes a lot of sense.
And let's see here.
Heck yeah, buddy.
You know what, people? The one of the things that has been coming up a lot lately is that there is promise in these drugs, and the question becomes why. If you look at the history of psychedelics, um, it's kind of a fascinating thing. It really is. If you take the word psychedelic, the etymology of the word psyche or soul, right, in the Latin, and delone, which is to reveal, and it literally translates to mind manifestation. And there's a lot of research being done currently right now. There's a doctor by the name of Stanislav Grof, and he's kind of like the Babe Ruth of these studies. And he has said that psychedelics are to the study of the mind what the microscope is to biology, or the telescope is to astronomy. And I think what he means is that for the first time, they're starting to map the brain, and they're starting to realize some things. If anybody has ever done these substances, it turns your mind on in a way that is undeniable. It's very, very profound. There's a reason that they call you don't get high on LSD or any of the other drugs that are often called trip drugs. The reason that they use that term is because there is very often considered you're taking a trip from reality. And now science is starting to figure out why these things happen the way that they do. In the 50s and 60s, LSD, right, which is sort of the one of the most famous of the psychedelics, was a drug that was being studied, and there was a lot of promise. There, it looked like this might be the end to depression. It looked like it might be the end to an awful lot of different ailments, PTSD, depression, all kinds of different promise for this substance. And the 50s and 60s was like a renaissance of this study. Originally in my goodness, the place where all of my watches are made, Switzerland. Thank you, Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland. A doctor by the name of Hoffman had synthesized LSD and accidentally dosed himself with it. Like, he realized that there was probably some hope with this stuff, but accidentally dosed himself and realized that this was really something different than what he thought he had created. And their deal was this: they would give it to anyone for free. Anyone out there that wanted to legitimately research this in for pharmacology or for therapy or anything like that, all you could handle. They give you tons of it so that you could go out and study this stuff. And the all of the results were really starting to look like this could be life-changing for much of the planet. And then people like us got a hold of it. I don't know how else to put that. People, I'll tell you what, I don't want to offend anybody. People like me got a hold of it. That's really what happened. And the next thing you know, this went from the laboratory and it escaped the laboratory and it ended up on the street. And the counterculture became famous for it. A doctor by the name of Timothy Leary, who was working, just gotten a job at Harvard right before starting. He was a psychologist. And right before starting at Harvard, he had gone down to Mexico and done some psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, and had an experience by the pool tripping. And he said he learned more about the mind in 4 hours than he had learned in all of the years of being a psychologist. Unfortunately, as very often happens with some of these substances, he went from wanting to study it to wanting to believe that this was the answer to changing the world. He said that if he could get 400 to 2 million people to dose at once, that they could achieve world peace and all of these things. And that sounded kind of ridiculous to the rest of the world. Druggies, for lack of a better way to put it, got a hold of a substance that really showed promise in the lab. And the next thing you know, people were eating way more of this than they were supposed to, right? The real promise showed in microdosing, not taking huge, massive amounts of this stuff. And instead of being done in the laboratory, it was starting to be done at rock concerts and in places where there was a lot of bad stuff happened. My best friend in high school, by way of full disclosure, on LSD did step out of a window. You hear all of those stories when you were a kid. Your parents tell you about this stuff. Well, the truth is, it absolutely happened to my best friend, and he broke his neck and has been in a wheelchair for the remainder of his life. He was 20 when it happened, and he's still alive and went and got his college degree and then his master's degree. It really kind of focused him in life, but um, he thought he wasn't he didn't think he could fly or any such crap. But to him, the distance from the window to the ground didn't look like 11 floors. It looked considerably smaller than that, and he was willing to take the risk. It was on like one of these to go from this window to that window and fell, and that was life changing stuff. And it certainly changed how I viewed the substance. But I've been spending time researching this and looking at some of the things that have been happening. In 1970, the Substance Act made LSD illegal, and it became a felony to possess. In fact, they can charge you with attempted manslaughter for every single hit you're caught with if you're selling, which is pretty heavy duty. There aren't a lot of drugs out there that were treated that viciously, and that drove everything underground. Now, that's one psychedelic drug. You have LSD, you have mescaline, you have something called iboga, which really has shown there's ibogaine clinics in Mexico and in other places where you take this drug as a way to get off of opiates, and you take it and have a very profound psychological effect. This trip lasts about 8 hours, and very often people never use again. Now, by way of full disclosure, I did ibogaine twice. The first time, I made it about 7 months without doing it again. You don't feel withdrawal sickness or anything else. The next day, you're pretty much cleared up. But for me, it never had that long-term effect. The science behind this is kind of fascinating, right? When you start to study exactly what's going on with this in the brain, you start to see why there is promise in this. There is a receptor called serotonin 5AC, right? This is the receptor in your brain when you hear selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? SSRIs, a $60 billion a year industry here in the United States that started in the 1990s. The selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors work specifically on that receptor to keep people from getting depressed. It does not cure your problem. It just treats the symptoms of depression by not allowing enough serotonin to get sucked back into the brain and keeping it coursing around in there. It's supposed to keep you from getting wildly depressed. Well, this is the exact same receptor that all of these drugs seem to fit like a puzzle piece into. And when they put people on a PET scan after doing these drugs, instead of seeing the brain activity just go completely wild all over the entire brain, which most people assume is what you would see, there is definitely some heightened stuff going on. But there's one part of the brain that, for all intents and purposes, shuts down completely. And this is where it kind of gets fascinating. The part of the brain that shuts down is called, believe it or not, the default mode. The default mode of the brain is, if you think of the brain as kind of like a corporation, this is the CEO. This is the part of your brain that takes care of running every other part of your brain all day, every day. And the easiest way to think of this is what makes your ego what it is. This is the part of your brain that makes Mark Mark and makes Tommy Tommy and makes Charlie Mullins Charlie Mullins. What it does is it allows you to interpret memories from your past, and it allows you to think about things in the future, but only as they relate to you. By turning off that part of your brain, other parts of your brain begin to communicate. And MDMA, right? Molly, ecstasy, whatever you want to call it. Same story, people. They were using this drug, and it was showing wild promise in the early 80s, treating marriage counseling, PTSD, particularly PTSD. And they were even working with soldiers with it and having great effects. And what happened? It escaped the lab, ended up in the street. Places like Texas made it so that you could legally do this stuff, and you could even go into bars and buy it. And now it became a party drug, which really isn't what it was designed for in any way, shape, or form. Methyl-oxymethamphetamine was really put into place to do something completely different. Now, when they do the therapies with this stuff, you got to realize that they don't go, all right, here's a hit of MDMA, go out and watch the Billy Joel concert and give us a call tomorrow. You should be cured. It's not, they give this to people in a very, very controlled environment. And they don't say, okay, welcome to the clinic. Here, we want you to take this. There are, massive amounts of therapy sessions in advance of the first dosing of this. And they prepare the mind and they prepare the patient and explain to people exactly what sort of happens in this. And then they create a very safe environment with usually two people to talk to the individual. And more often than not, it's a male and a female, and people that are trained to sort of walk somebody through the process. Every single day in this country, we're losing 60, that would be 60 soldiers to suicide. I'm going to say that one more time. 60 of our soldiers, people that went and fought for this country, and I don't care, people, if you don't like the decisions that sent them there. These are people that put their life on the line for freedom and for things, whether you believe in all of that means nothing. These are people that selflessly go and fight while we stay home. And 60 of them a day commit suicide. So they started doing efficacy trials with MDMA to be treating people with PTSD. And one of the test groups was soldiers. Now, traditionally, if you take a soldier and you put them through counseling, no drugs, no nothing, just regular counseling to try to get them through PTSD, believe it or not, they have about a 23% success rate, which, whether you realize it or not, is massive. That's huge. 23% of all the soldiers they work with, they're able to sort of work through the process of figuring out what's causing the PTSD and seeing really, really good stuff. However, when the efficacy group, when they started to dose these people with and there's only 3 times in the entire year that they're going to do any of this drug. The rest of the time is just when they talk about it. And they get people prepared for it. And then the after effect of the trip where they sort of work through what the people were thinking. The rate went from 23% to 56%, right? Better than doubled, which is really phenomenal if you think about it. And after 1 year, the 2/3 were cured. And by cured, they mean these people said there is nothing in their life that has any problem having to do with PTSD. 2/3. And the amazing thing is these people don't continue to do the drug. None of them. They just were able to work through the problem. And I think what happens is it turns off the part of the brain that is creating its own story. There's one great example. If you start to do a little research on this, you'll hear the story of one soldier in particular who, after the first dosing of MDMA, said, I came to realize that the only reason that I was holding on to all of this PTSD was because in my head, it honored the people that didn't make it. And after an experience of really shutting down the ego part of his brain and turning on other aspects of the brain, he said, but for the first time, I was able to see myself through the eyes of the people who died. And they were disgusted at how I was living. He never went back. He said to them, I don't need any more of these sessions. I'm done. And that was 9 years ago. He's in Cambodia these days, and he works with people who have less than us. And he's just at peace in life. And you keep hearing stories like this, one right after the other. But I think it gets back to something that we say here on the boat all the time. We're not anti-drug. Right? We really are not anti-drug. What we are is anti-addiction. Now, by way of full disclosure, these are not drugs that people get addicted to for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is almost impossible to go to work, to do anything else while on these drugs. They're very, very strong psychoactive drugs. So it's not like people can sort of blend in, in the workplace or, at night. The other reason is if you take LSD on Monday, and then you try taking it on Tuesday, you have to take so much more the second day. It has a very unique thing in the body, and same with almost every one of these drugs. Because of what it's doing in the brain, you can't do it 5 days in a row. And if you did, if you started with 1 dose on Monday, by Saturday, you'd be taking 60 or 70 doses to get the same effect. It's a very, very unique compound that way. So these are not drugs that really have a potential for abuse. However, they're dangerous as all hell outside of a laboratory setting. People take this stuff and get in a car and go for a drive. Not good, right? This is not something that this is not what this stuff is safely. It just doesn't work that way. And right now, believe it or not, people, the Food and Drug Administration is allowing this to go forward. When you get to the part of research where it is efficacy research, that is the last step before licensing. So whether you weigh in on this thinking this is a great idea or you think this is the worst idea you've ever heard, it is coming to a town near you in the very, very near future. I mean, they're saying that within the next 2 decades, we could be seeing maybe 600,000 of these clinics in the US. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you something. This may shock you. I'm all for it. I'm 100% all for it. You can't argue with the results. The big problem with
math doesn't lie, does it?
Math doesn't lie, right? And the big issue for people for a long time has been the horror stories, that have come out concerning these drugs, and a lot of them are, by the way, completely justified. I could tell you a story, and this is a gospel truth. And in the town that I grew up in, we had a guy named Dave. I won't say his last name, but Dave would hang out on the village green and play hacky sack, footbag with the kids from the high school. And he was 47. And the story goes that in the 60s, he took a absolutely massive dose of LSD and just sort of never came down. But it was 4 sheets of acid, right? That's 400 hits, right? That's not what this stuff was designed to do. There was a guy from Pink Floyd who did the same thing. One of the original founding members of Pink Floyd completely destroyed himself with LSD, and these stories got out. But it's in my mind, it's like saying, all guns need to be removed from society because someone just shot someone with one. If you use anything and you're stupid about it, and unfortunately, we're the kind of crowd that does stupid stuff with drugs, right? I was addicted to opiates. Opiates are one of the greatest drugs in the entire world for what they're designed to do. You break your thigh, there's nothing better than opiates, right? If you're dying of cancer, it is a miracle drug. Hey, the Chili Mancer.
Yeah, he's in here. Yeah, good to see you, Chili.
Donnie's one of my favorite people in the world. Donnie, good to see you, my brother. Really, really good to see you. He said, it's good to be back here. I really have to start making an effort to make these streams. Yes, you do.
Man, come on. You're letting us down. No,
yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, right? No, seriously, we've been talking about you every day when you're not here. No, it's good to have you here, man. It really is. Brittany has eyes. Good to see you, Brittany. The truth of the matter is, people, it feels weird. Mark and I had this conversation. This is one of those subjects that, we're an anti-drug channel, but we're not, right? We're a sobriety channel. But if you talk to people about us and what we do here, we really come across as anti-drug. We're anti-addiction, and this is showing more promise in treating addiction than we are or anything else. And the reason is, people, I want this to make sense. I don't want you to think I'm an idiot. I want this to make sense. So the part of the brain that this is going to turn off is the default mode. The part that creates ego. Do you know what your ego, that part of your brain, does all day long? It talks to you. This is the part of your brain that creates the story of you. So all day long, you have self-talks. Talk like, man, I can't get through today without a cigarette. Right? That's that part of the brain. Or the part of the brain that says, man, I don't care how many times I try, I can't get off opiates. I'm a loser. I'm this, I'm that. I'm always going to be fat. I'm always going to be lazy. I'm never going to be successful. That's the part of your brain that we try to turn off every day with the things that we tell people here.
Yep.
What's blue and not very heavy? Light blue. Not your best work, 7th. No, I'm kidding.
It's funny you said that right as Major was talking. The comment there says, I don't need drugs. I'm just stupid anyway.
Well, you know what?
It kind of falls into that, doesn't it?
There you go, right? That is the part of your brain, and you may be saying that in jest, but the part of your brain that just said that is most assuredly the ego. right? That's the or the name, what we nickname the ego, but it is absolutely the default mode of your brain that has that kind of self-talk. And if you can turn that off, you know, this is what people do with meditation. You understand? There are people out there that get the exact same effect from meditation, but unfortunately, when most people sit down to meditate, if you say to someone that's never meditated before, look, you really want to get off dope, meditation's huge for you, right? I've had this conversation with so many people. You got to try to meditate. And what you're doing is looking inside and trying to turn off the voice that talks about you.
Yep.
And you sit down and you give it 30 seconds and you look at yourself and you go, oh, yeah, there's nothing here. This is boring as hell. I can't do this. Or you give it a full year or 2 years, but you just can't seem to master it. And even people who spend entire lifetimes meditating, who are now in these efficacy research studies, will say that all this is really heightened meditation. It's the ability to turn off. And when you hear the stories of the people, it's the ability to turn off that part of the brain. And when you hear people talk about these stories, for people who do MDMA, they always talk about how it's the love drug. Well, if the part of your brain that only concentrates on you gets turned off, and the rest of your brain goes to work, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to look around and go, man, everybody is worthy.
Yep.
Right? If you have a conversation with somebody, if you sit down, whether you realize this or not, people, if you have a conversation with somebody and you say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of getting a new job. I'm thinking of leaving the one that I'm at right now. They go like this. They do this one.
Yeah.
You're going to change everything you just were getting ready to say.
Yep.
Whether you realize it or not, this is what we do as human beings. Because the default part of your brain is saying to you right then, ooh, Mark thinks I'm an idiot. I don't want to have this conversation with him. So instead of saying, this is my dream and I'm going to chase it, you say, well, I don't know. At least, I'm thinking about it, or I'm working. If you turn off that part of your brain and you say to somebody, hey, I'm thinking of going and getting a new gig, no matter what they say, it's not going to affect you, because the part of your brain that is so hyper focused on shame and embarrassment and who Tommy is gets turned off like a light switch. But
Tanya made a really good comment here.
What is it?
It says, mine says just one beer, but that never happens.
Yeah.
You see what I'm
Well,
saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're talking about. It really
That is exactly what I'm talking about. And the research that's coming out of this says, you think to yourself, well, how often do I have to do this? So I walk around tripping my whole life. The experiences are often so profound. When I was going through and doing the research on this, they were talking to a woman who did her first experience on psilocybin, which is the ingredient in mushrooms, and she was trying to quit smoking. That was the purpose of her therapy. And they had her close her eyes. She put an eye shield on. They played a little music or whatever, and she said, I wasn't hallucinating as in seeing things, but in my mind, she said, I could feel myself sort of traveling the world. And she said that by the time it was over, she realized that there was just so much incredible stuff out there to see and to do that she just didn't want to kill herself with cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to tell me that for her entire life, she didn't think, boy, I don't want to die early. Like, these cigarettes are killing me. But every day she goes and she picks one up. Every day she goes and she picks one up, because she's got this default setting of the brain saying to her, don't waste your time. You're not going to be able to do this.
Right.
Don't waste your time. You're not going to be able to do this. It's one of those absolutely bizarre things that we talk about all the time on the boat. Your brain is fighting you at every turn. You want to be a better person. You want to stay sober. You want to do all of these things. You want to stop beating yourself up. All of these things. And have this. Go ahead.
There's a really famous person that that I don't think we've talked about this here, but he did a lot of different drugs, but he would use this and a host of others, so don't leave that out, to solve crimes. Guess who that was? And that's well documented. Sherlock Holmes.
Oh yeah, in every book.
That's a real person, guys. I know some people think that's a fictitious thing, but that man would use stuff like that, and it would open his mind to be able to think in a way that nobody else was, and he would solve so many crimes. It's crazy. It's a real thing. So you gotta get them walls down. Get them walls down. Let your mind, get back to what it's doing. And again, I don't know exactly where I fall in this conversation. You know, I think it's great that we're talking about it because I am not as educated on this as Tommy is, and you know, I'm listening to everything he's saying really close tonight because it really is something I don't know a whole lot about, but I do know enough. You know, I've heard, you know, now of course Sherlock Holmes did a lot of opiates. Okay, we get that.
He did.
Yeah,
Did some cocaine too. Like he was throughout all of the stories. He's very, very involved in it, and usually through, an injection. That was how he.
yeah. But
Yeah,
he did the hallucinogenic thing though too, and that's
yeah. Here's an odd comment. It's not an odd comment. It's a perfect timing comment. Heather says every negative thought, change it to a positive one. It takes time, like years, but it can be done. Agreed. 100%. I agree. And I think that it may take a lifetime for some people through meditation, right? Some people say you can do it considerably quicker. Research is saying you can do it in about 6 hours with the right therapist and a controlled dosage, a micro dosage of some stuff that is really going to rewire the mind. And I'm all for this continuing to be studied. But the crazy thing is this: um, in a controlled hospital setting, right, therapeutic setting where they're doing this, there is absolutely no downside. In the entire study, they never said, oh, and so and so freaked out and hung himself, or so and so did this. There was never that negative part of the story, because as all of those things that are happening with the bad trip and all of those things, you've got somebody there to work through this with you. What really makes things, and I've done, by way of full disclosure, people, I've done a mountain of psychedelics, a mountain of psychedelics. I've done a ton of acid. I've done a ton of mushrooms. It was a very, very big thing. Uh, my generation, where I grew up, especially the people with skiing and all of that, it was a very, very big thing. But I never did any of them right.
right.
I really didn't. Like this was not something that I did. And I there were some really horrendous experiences for me. But the ones that were horrendous, it was always because I found myself in a really bizarre place to be on that substance. And it basically caused a meltdown, and one that I had a very difficult time getting back from, so to speak. But
Well,
I
I
can
mean,
see. Go
so
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I would just, you know, if you tried everything else, guys, I mean, and there's really, like you said, no downfall to this. What what's keeping people from trying it? You know what I mean? What I'm saying is, what can it hurt? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Okay, you move on, right? If you're in a hospital setting, you're being watched very closely, and somebody's there to help you through this in case you do have the quote unquote bad trip.
Right.
You're not going to be hurt. You're just going to be able to work that out. And you know, and Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong on this too. Sometimes it takes more than once, right? I mean, am I?
Yeah, they no, yeah, they most of these therapies are 3 doses, never more than that.
Okay.
And it's usually done over either a 9-month protocol or a 12-month protocol. The newest of the studies, and it has not. They're in the process of doing it now. It's not done yet, so there's no research to put out. But it's for obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay.
Right now, they're batting 1,000. They really are. They almost double the success rate of every single ailment they're studying, whether it be PTSD, whether it be they work extensively with people who have been raped,
Yeah.
and work through some really, I mean, some horrendous things, the worst things that could ever happen to you. Guys coming back from war, again, 60 suicides a day. There's nothing I wouldn't entertain to
Right.
try to save those 60 people a day. And if the research continues to go well, but I think um, the takeaway for this for me is, if this doesn't work, if this is something that doesn't go well, it's going to be because of people like us. Not today, but the people we were. If this doesn't go well, it's going to be because jackwagons, managed to get this stuff out of the therapeutic session and into the party scene, and they're going to, virtually destroy what could be a really, really amazing thing.
It's kind of
Angel Wings says, I'm sorry, I did shrooms once. Wow, amazing things. I could see people's true faces within. That's, I mean, there's probably
that's
something to that.
yeah, and I actually forgot what I was going to say.
I have that. You know what? I've done
Yeah,
that to you
yeah.
before.
No, no, it's okay. I'm sure I'll
Yeah.
remember here in a second. Oh,
No, what I was.
I know what I was gonna say.
Oh,
Let me. Sorry,
yeah,
Tommy.
I was going to tell you what I was talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
um,
jog the mind.
it's very very similar in my if I'm thinking about this the right way of making new memories. It's kind of the same thing. Um, kind of breaking that down, and you're able to, get past that wall and create a new memory to replace the old one. Um,
It's really funny that you say that. It really is because this is a hard subject to talk about because the technical aspects of it, you're talking about hippocampus, you're talking about all the different parts of the brain, and it gets somewhat overwhelming. But sort of like in layman's terms, the it shifts the focus, right, and it turns off the ego. And in the process of doing that, it turns on part of your brain which stores memories permanently and interprets them. And we talked about this in a show last season, how you get attacked by a bear. There's a part of your brain that goes, if I ever see a bear again, I'm running like hell, right?
yeah, yeah,
And PTSD, in patients with PTSD, that part of their brain becomes fixated. And the part of the brain that interprets what goes on doesn't work rationally. So, people with serious anxiety disorders, they go, oh, so and so's at this party and I don't like so and so. My God, I'm going to die. Well, that's not logical, right?
yeah.
I mean, you're not going to die. I'm going to avoid this guy. I'm not going to go over and talk to him. And, but the logical part of how you interpret memories doesn't work right. And over the course of 3 sessions, they doubled the success rate of sort of doing just what Mark said, taking the old memories that you're so fixated on. And it's not that they erase them, they turn them into a new memory.
Yeah, like mold around it. Yeah.
Correct. It literally now when you think of the memory, instead of thinking of the memory where it took place, you're thinking of the memory in this therapeutic session where there were 2 people sitting there going, you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about this. This guy shows up at a party and don't worry about it. Just walk away from him.
Right.
And all of a sudden, 2 people guide you through a process. And when this experience is over, and the next time that panic attack comes on, you go, I don't need to worry about this. And that really, I mean, it's simplifying it, but that's exactly what's going on with this stuff.
Well, it's kind of like this. Would it be like say, because I worked in plastics, right? So it's kind of like a plastic bowl was made, and there was a defect. So what do? They don't just throw it in the trash, guys. They grind it back up and put it right back through the machine.
Yeah, recycle.
It recycled that thing. Exactly. So yeah.
Brittany Has Eyes says, yes, you go back and forgive and it rewires your brain. Literally grow new connections. It's exactly what they're talking about doing. I mean, she nailed it.
Yep.
Now, the only other thing that could screw this up, and amazingly, if they get on board people, I don't think you can imagine just how a big part of a society this is going to be in the future. As opposed to fighting big pharma on this, they're trying to get in bed with big pharma on this. Because these drugs stand the chance of wiping out a $60 billion a year industry.
Yeah.
$60 billion a year.
Yeah.
Well, rehab, and not to mention the SSRIs and all of the antidepressants. And to be really honest, antidepressants have a vicious list of side effects. Impotence, lack of libido, weight gain, right? Insomnia, all of these different things. And we put up with it because it beats the hell out of being depressed.
Yep.
Right? But if you could just, every once in a while, you may have to go back in for a tune-up. And they talk about that. If you find yourself slipping back in, you call up your counselor and you say, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling like I was 6 months ago. Well, they go, come back in. Then they take 2 months to get you ready again. They never take you in the front door and go, here, eat this. It's really, a very focused kind of a thing. And when I started to put this show together, I was ready to come on here and say, I don't care how good this stuff is. This is a drug that probably doesn't need to be in the mainstream. And that's just not where I fall on this anymore. And if you think that this is uncaptain-like, then I would suggest that you go and you listen to this. Because the research on this stuff, people, is, and I'm not going to, captaintrips.com. Like I was, because for real, there are people out there with an agenda, but Johns Hopkins University, did the last study, and their job was not to dose people or do anything else. Their job was just to observe everything that the people at a place called MAPS, who was on the forefront of this, MAPS was doing their treatment and all of that. Johns Hopkins' job was just to watch all of this go down and then report. Their job was just to do the follow-up to see how these people were doing and everything else. And they walked away literally sort of blown away.
Yeah. That's hey Johnny, what's up, bud?
Hey, praying for you, Charlie. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we needs to happen. But yeah, the more
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
go.
No,
I got time.
I just didn't want to have us forget that today's 9/11 either. I think we need to recognize that for a second.
Oddly enough, it dovetails into what we're talking about.
Okay.
Because one of the groups that they worked with in one of the studies was first responders from 9/11.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because Ground Zero was a really, really brutal thing for the people that were working there. You know, their job was to go in and find as small a part as you could to try to identify people. And very often this is the kind of thing that people do not bounce back from. It's so profoundly life-changing, and they've had a lot of success working with these people. So it's weird for me to come here and weigh in on this side of it. Honestly, the research swayed me. I don't feel comfortable saying it. I really don't. But
well, the thing is, Tommy, I mean, these same kinds of conversations were being had around Suboxone.
Yes.
So, I mean,
good point, Mark.
At some point in time, I mean, you guys, we've always said, keep an open mind, always.
Yeah.
You have to. And when we're talking to ourselves, the whole time we're saying it to you too. And, we go into certain conversations or certain subjects thinking that we already know what we think about something. And then something happens during the course of either a live stream or just the research itself. And you start to realize, hey, because you're open-minded enough, you can let that new stuff in. We don't get better unless we're able to do that. We're stuck with what we have. And frankly, guys, everything that we have right now, whatever your opinion is on any of that, isn't working. It works good enough for what me and Tommy are doing, what you guys are doing on the physical part of with Suboxone and stuff. But
sure.
To have a really good, like, I don't know, just a good handle on everything, we're not there. This society
not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close.
So yeah,
we really aren't. And I'm glad that you said that the way you did, because it really is.
Majors in here.
Hold on. What? Yeah, full of hope. Becoming a Christian and putting my old woman to death and walking forward in Christ had the same effect on my brain. The past became dim and the light in front of me was so attractive. I just want more. Let me tell you something, full of hope. That's exactly what happens. There's a reason that all of these things are described. If you go back prior to 1960, the vast majority of usages for this stuff was in religious ceremonies. And, I saw a lot of things online that made me really uncomfortable when I first started looking at it, because, they were interviewing a guy that just said, I micro dose on psilocybin 2 to 3 times a month. And I thought, good, what's he trying to work through? And he said, and for me, it's just about prayer. And I thought, oh, that's not too cool. But when you start to see the research, and it says that the part of the brain that this is activating literally is breaking down barriers, there are people for whom prayer is not something they can wrap their brain around. And the more they interviewed this guy, he said, I'm not telling you that I ate drugs and saw God, because I didn't. He said, but it broke down the barriers that made me uncomfortable in prayer. It's a blessing that you're not uncomfortable, but there are people that are. And for people who struggle really difficultly with anything emotionally, I don't give a crap what you're doing that can help it. If you're doing it in a clinical setting, I saw a comment of somebody that said, boy, I wish I had a triple stack right now. And I'm not busting on anyone that says anything, but outside of the therapeutic, I don't want to see disco biscuits sold at clubs. I lived that in Texas, and it was god awful. When I was a young, ecstasy was legal in bars, and you know what? It wasn't good. It wasn't. I saw terrible it was bad stuff. It really was. And I toured with the Grateful Dead, right? I spent a lot of time going to shows and saw a lot of people doing drugs that had no right doing drugs, right? Not people that ever prepared themselves consciously. Any drug is a heavy duty thing on the mind, right? It is. Any drug is heavy on the mind. And if you say, yeah, just turn it loose, So have you ever done this stuff before? No, but I'm willing to try it. You hand somebody, that's a dangerous situation.
Major, can you hear me, bud? Hello. You're in here, but I don't see any audio for you. So
if you're muted, my man, you need to unmute.
I don't know if he's muted or not. I don't see any kind of microphone next to his name at all. I don't know what the deal is with that. There, I heard something there. Anyway, let's move on until we can work on that on the background. But I was going to ask you too, is there any addictive properties to this?
Here's the deal with that. Technically, according to all of the research, this is a non-addictive substance. That doesn't mean you can't become an idiot on it. And there are people that do. However, it's very rarely the substance as much as it is the culture, right? The more they study this stuff, you don't see anybody that says, I want to go to the therapeutic place for treatments on this 6 days a week.
Right.
You see guys that say, Fish is on tour. I think I'll eat acid 5 days a week, right? It's the people that tend to, even Timothy Leary, it stopped being about this therapeutic substance that could help people to, we could change the world if we all just get high. And that's just, first of all, it literally destroyed a very promising, or at least buried it for decades. In 1984, the first hearing to allow any kind of research into this first went in front of the DEA and the Food and Drug Administration and was shot down viciously. And it wasn't until 2014 or 2016 that they allowed this thing to go forward. One of the big problems was they would say, well, we don't understand how this works in the brain. There's a ton of drugs we don't know how they work in the brain. The only thing we need for a drug to be legal is to prove that it is effective in treating something and that it is not dangerous in terms of side effects. And in the controlled environment that they're using this in, it's a landslide. This is no one's ever OD'd, right? This is not a drug that you do and it shuts your heart down or any of that stuff. So there's just, it's pointing in this direction, people, in a big way. And Wall Street's all over it, by the way.
Oh,
I looked into that as well, and the number of publicly traded companies that are just doing this is insane.
So it's kind of like, I guess the addiction would be kind of a mental addiction. Is that kind of?
It's it's less than 2% of which is below everything else, right? Alcoholism is 10%, right? Of people who drink, 1 in 10 will get addicted. With opiates, it's considerably higher. With methamphetamine, it's considerably higher. So and they don't call it addicting; they call it abuse, because no one really goes, oh God, I need the next hit of acid, or I got to eat mushrooms, or I'm going to freak out. It's not an addiction, but they kind of get into a culture where tune in, drop out, and. Right.
So I guess withdrawals on that would be almost probably like physically.
There is zero withdrawal at all.
Okay.
Yeah, zero withdrawal at all.
That was kind of my question, because if you don't have that, then you're not worried about that part of it. So you can try it, and it gives you a little bit more peace of mind to go ahead and try it in the right setting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the Ibogaine clinics. I'd be really honest with you, man. The difference in terms of the effects on the body, Ibogaine felt like I did mushrooms. I didn't notice any kind of a real difference. It's just what I did notice was the first time I did it, I went in with a 5 gram a day habit. And when I walked out the next day, I didn't do any dope and I wasn't dope sick. So it was a pretty incredible thing that way. But, being the person I was, I started going back to try to, it became a ripcord. Well, I'll just get really strung out and then I'll just go do some more Ibogaine. And they've made it far more difficult to be able to get any.
You're not an idiot.
I
know. I hope that was a joke, but I mean, that really could be somebody that actually thinks that way. I'm not saying
no, because you know what? The term. I think I used the term idiot earlier.
Yeah.
But truthfully, it's with that substance, it's different because the people that abuse, LSD, like we all saw the people on the Dead shows, and for the most part, these people literally do drop out. Like it becomes something that the people who abuse this substance, usually it becomes about the lifestyle. They tour with a band, or they. But yeah, you're not an idiot cemetery. In fact, you got one of the great sense of humors of anybody on the boat. You're quick on your feet.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna address that real quick. Tara, Zoom is not really hard for this, just so you know. All you do is click a link. If you click a link and you have Zoom, you come right in. There's no, and all you have to do is unmute.
And he was there. I mean, we saw him. I don't know what happened
He's still there, but it's not on our end.
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to say. There's not even no audio there for him to click on. I don't know. It's got to be because, yeah. Anyway, I mean, I send Tommy a link, just like you guys would be clicking a link every day. And all he does is click on it.
So far, I've done it 560 some odd times, and with no disrespect to anybody, if Johnny Scoville can figure it out, then a caveman could do it.
Well, I would also say this too. Somebody said something about
Chaplain J Trips.
Yeah. What was that? What did that say? Something about Discord, guys. If you want something complicated, we can go to Discord.
Right.
You would have to download Discord. You would have to sign up. You would have to be admitted into a server. There is no just calling in on that, guys. Okay,
right.
Just so you understand that. And I'm working on something in the background here to try to just get a phone number. So I'm trying to make it as easy as I can. But in order to get at this point just a phone number, it costs like $300 a month to carry that phone number, and we don't have that. So
yeah, no, that's not quite an option yet. Stacy Michaels says Ibogaine illegal in the U.S. but not in Mexico and many other countries. I'll be honest with you. The first time I did it in Mexico, the second time I bought it on the dark web, and got it. So the second time we didn't do it in the same kind of a setting, but we weren't trying to party either. We tried to basically recreate. It was me and a friend named Jeff, and we tried to recreate exactly what they had done for us in the Ibogaine clinic we went to the first time. But Stacy, if you want to weigh in, I'd love to hear what your opinion is on this subject, because Stacy is a medical professional, and I think it might be interesting to hear her opinion on this. I know that this is polarizing. You know what I mean? I know it's a subject but I can think of 3 people on this boat, right, who I care deeply about, and the 3 of them are not. They're not concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
They're here because of family members who, in many cases, they've almost given up hope. Yeah. And, there are people, I've spent a lot of time. Full of Hope says, Lifeboat, is there anything you haven't done? Do you mean in terms of drugs? I have never, there's a couple. I didn't do bath salts. I didn't do K2, but for the most part, I did everything. Yeah. Noise opera. Thank you, my friend.
Let me say this real quick. I just want, just so you guys understand where I'm at. I am not offended by what you guys are suggesting. I want your guys' suggestions. Okay. So if I came across that way, I apologize. Hopefully I didn't. I don't think you are mad at me or anything.
I didn't get you that way.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I want you guys to understand that I've entertained so many different things here, guys. It is it's kind of it is one of those things, and we are working towards just a phone number. Okay, that's something that I'm trying to get going. And you mentioned Discord. Discord most definitely works really well if the people know how to use it, and that's the other thing. And as far as Zoom goes, guys, Zoom is everywhere. There's court cases. You can watch these Zoom people in at the court, they for their trial.
Well, we tried everything before we did Zoom, and the reason we did Zoom is because it was the only thing that I could figure out. Stacy Michael says private sessions can be arranged in the U.S. They're still illegal. Ibogaine can cause a low heart rate and has killed a few people. Has that killed people in the medical setting, Stacy, or is that something that in these, sort of, I remember the clinic in Mexico, like there were doctors and nurses, and it wasn't like we went to someone's house. They were, and it was pretty controlled stuff. I remember them, coming in pretty recently. I mean, pretty regularly, taking vitals and doing things. But I hadn't, even in the research that I was doing before the show, although Ibogaine doesn't get the same kind of press that, probably because they're not doing it with these studies in the U.S. That's not one of the drugs that they're working with. The big ones right now in the U.S. would be psilocybin and mushrooms, so psilocybe cubensis and MDMA are the two real big ones that they're pushing.
Yeah.
Not medical clinics. Makes sense, Stacey. I believe that, and I think that's kind of one of the things that. Hold on one second. That's one of the things that I was that I'm worried about, is that these things are going to end up in places where, yeah, people are going to abuse them and they're going to die. Space Diesel says, I've only sniffed ketamine, but there are ketamine therapy clinics that administer through IV. I've heard it can help with depression. Not sure about somebody off hard drugs. They are using that for depression. I've done ketamine and I didn't enjoy it a whole lot. I found that to be, for me, it was a very frightening substance. I didn't like that much.
Yeah, Angel, we have tried that, by the way, guys. I've tried StreamYards, and again, I'm not saying that we're not going to end up going to something like that. This is a growing process for us. We are trying to work it out, and it's just something we got to deal with. And again, I've got multiple programs downloaded on my computer, and it's just, so I'm trying to test them out. I don't want to start a show and then I have anybody be able to call in at all, and that's what I'm trying to avoid here. And just because we promised you guys we'd talk to you about the inside baseball stuff, that's why I'm bringing it up. And I appreciate the suggestions, guys. I really do. And yes, Angel, you're 100% right. A lot of people use StreamYard. It is one of those programs, but at the same time, it's very, very similar to.
You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to lose my stuff.
Why?
Right now, I'm going to lose it.
Okay.
I really am. I'm going to lose it.
All
right. There are people that aren't getting in here, right? Who are having a tough time getting back here. And it probably has something to do with what you've done this afternoon before you came to the boat. And everybody on the boat knows who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about. I love everybody. You can come here half in the bag, and you have been consistently for a period of time. No problem. But when it starts to be something that's grinding on other people on the boat on a daily basis, then you need to get yourself in check. We had people that came here drunk every day for 6 months, but never said anything to offend anybody or bum anybody out. But if you're going to come and be disruptive while you're drunk, then that's a problem, right? The last thing in the world I want to do is be this guy. You understand that? This isn't what I want. What I want is everybody to get along and everybody to make sense. We got people not making sense. You know what I'm talking about? Everybody on the damn boat, except for probably one person, knows what I'm talking about. Terribly sorry. Boy, you have no idea how sorry I am. But it gets old. It really does.
Yeah.
I'm trying really, really hard to be a very cool guy. I don't care what you come in here on. Don't be disruptive. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Sorry.
No.
Space Diesel says mushrooms can be very beneficial in the right setting and proper dose. But this is my just my personal opinion. I understand everybody reacts differently. Well, I'll tell you this. There was a lot of science, Space Diesel, that says the exact same thing. But again, micro doses, we're not talking about people doing 6 and 7 grams of this stuff. They're talking about a very controlled environment. They don't want to shut down the brains, the entire brain, and they don't want to make parts of the brain so hyperactive that they can't communicate with each other. If you understand what I'm saying, ideally, this really has to be done in a setting with professionals who are going to walk you through this entire process. And I don't advocate partying. I really don't.
Yeah, I think that's what you were saying earlier too. I mean, I really think that's the point we have to stick with, that this has to be done in the proper way. And all the research is done in that setting, guys.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Anything outside of that research numbers don't apply. It's
And if you decide, like, like I remember when I was growing up and I would go to a party or I would go skiing and someone would go, "Hey, we got shrooms. You want to do them?" And that was about the preparation, right? I go, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" These are people going and talking to psychologists for 3 months, getting ready for this process so they can say to them, "Here's what we want to get out of it. And here's how we're going to walk you through it." So that the day of the event, because it's going to be done 3 times, on the day of the event, when it's over, they're going to sit down the following day and say, "Let's go through what happened. By the way, we videoed it. So there are some things that we want to show you." And it really is a process. I have a much different respect for this after seeing what they're doing versus because when I first was asked to start researching this, and it was a while back, and I started to research it, I thought to myself, I've done this stuff. You can't help people with this stuff, man.
right.
You're going to trip your balls off and then somehow be healthy. Like, to me, that just seemed really stupid. But as I see I know, good Lord, as I see it start to come together, as I see it start to come together.
Jesus, man. Okay. Yeah, it is at the top, brother. Let's we're going.
Top of the hour.
Yes, top
I
of the
love you.
hour.
I love you, people, man.
Oh yeah. It's
Make
awesome.
make no mistake. Listen, Boat, I love you.
Yep.
You know that, right? I love you. I really do. That's from the bottom of the heart. I'm sorry.
And remember, cemetery. It's Tommy's fault, man. It's Tommy's fault. You got him wearing wristwatches again, Tommy. What the heck are you doing?
Right. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Pocket watches and wristwatches. You can't go wrong. I'm doing my part. I am absolutely doing my part. Jackson, I love you too, man. Miss V, I love you.
Guys.
Yeah, I really do.
I love all the suggestions, guys. You guys actually you brought up. I didn't even think about Discord until a few months ago when somebody else suggested it. So I do love the suggestions. Just keep that in mind.
Seriously. My daughter is hugely into Discord. She has a Discord server and all of it. And I'll be honest with you, people, as long as I don't have to get anywhere near the stuff or understand it, that's great. Because she says to me, "You need to stop by the server." I can't do any of that stuff. I really can't. I was able to download Zoom. It took me about 2 seconds. I downloaded Zoom and life got really easy. So that's why we went with it, because it's so easy as Scoville can do it. All right. People.
And one more thing before we get off here.
Yep.
And what probably will happen is once I figure out what's best for this whole call-in format, me and Tommy will probably still be here on Zoom, but we'll bring you guys in on something different. And that's whatever's easier for whatever we figure out, because I can do that through OBS. So just so you guys know, and I've pushed against that a little bit because it does eat up some bandwidth when you got two of those running, but I think my internet's strong enough to hold it. And if that's the case, then I can actually just run Skype and Zoom or whatever else. We can run them both. So just so you guys understand. And I know Tommy probably didn't follow me there a whole lot, but he might have. I don't know.
My brother says I take umbrage with that. I can't do it. Hey, Tommy Bird, shoot me an email, Tommy. I wanted to talk to you anyway. People, we will be back tomorrow night right here. You have my word. We'll be back here tomorrow night. I love this boat, and I love everybody on it. Everybody. Even if I'm yelling at you, I love you. So between now and then, reach out and try to save somebody. And I'll tell you something. Open mind, right? To all things, open minds are a really good thing. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
Cat in the basket. Good night, everybody. We love you.